Welcome to another episode of Chalks and Crocs.
Hey, welcome back to our channel. So today I'm joining you from our homeschool space where we are going to have a conversation about using the national parks for your homeschooler. We just started this year for our first grader and we've had a great start so far. So I have some really great resources that I'd love to share with you. When I was first thinking about using the national parks as our curriculum, I was thinking about how it would be structured, what I wanted it to look like. And so I started with the Waldock Way's Traveling the Parks curriculum. So I printed this out and bound it, and it's a teacher manual, an animal profiles manual, and a student manual. And what I like about it is that it gives the structure to the National Park study in a way that's very easy to manage, and it's the same structure for each and every part that you'll study. And then I decided to supplement that with additional readings and additional activities, and I'll show you that too. So the way Traveling the Parks is set up is that there is a different lesson plan for each of the national parks. And they look like this. For this particular curriculum, there's only one required reader, and that's going to be your spine. And then there are suggested resources of books, activities, games, and shows. So she lists those here. And if you're working on a iPad or a computer, those are clickable links. So the one required reader for this is Lonely Planet Kids, America's National Parks book. And essentially, it has a 2 to 3 page or 2 to 4 page spread on each national park. The pictures in this are beautiful, and it corresponds exactly with her handouts in the student workbook. So for every national park, she provides a checklist of the different activities that you will be doing for each park. So the activities are the same for every single park. And then there's space on the bottom for notes. And that's where I'm writing my additional activities and my additional reading material that I have. So we just finished the Great Smoky Mountains study. And so this is what we have for that. So I'll show you what that looks like in the student notebook. The very first thing that is going to be on your national park checklist for the national park you're studying is to do the required reading. And then that is from the Lonely Planet spine that she recommended. After that, you're going to complete your map route page. So for every park, you'll complete a page where you're going to map your route. So we did this, and then we calculated our travel time. And then the page after that, you're going to complete a little entry called Park and Numbers. And on that page, it has a place for the weather and then specific data on that exact park. So the information from that is coming directly from the Lonely Planet book. So what that looks like essentially is beginning research. Here's your Parks and Numbers page for the Great Smoky Mountains. And then what that looks like again in the student notebook. So your child is going back to the book, finding the information they need, and then filling it out on that page. Then after that, there's a page here on things to do and things to see in the national park, and a place for them to draw. So I'm having him do the drawings, and I'm his scribe at this point, and so I am writing down his thoughts. But all of that is coming directly from the Lonely Planet book also. Now this is listed as like the second or third activity in the student notebook. We did this on the final day of our study because I felt like it was a great journal entry and a great culminating activity once we've learned a lot about the national parks for that whole week. So we used and pulled from information from other books and resources to complete that page. And I thought that was a nice way to do it. For the animal profile, you're going to use the animal profile book here, and she profiles one animal for each of the national parks. So for the Great Smoky Mountains, the animal is the lungless salamander. And like I'll show you a little bit later, we used additional resources for our animal study just so we had a choice of animals. And then my child was able to pick the animal that they wanted to do for their animal study, which ended up being the salamander. But there's a place here to draw, and then again, a place to write some facts about the animals. So you'll be doing that with your child for every national park. So that's in there. And again, these all go back to that checklist. So we talked about the required reading, the mapping, your route, then the profile and numbers page, and then the journal page and the animal profile. Going back to watching the videos, I'll show you where that comes from. Each page will tell you which pages to read in the Lonely Planet spine, and we'll also have a QR code here. That QR code will bring you right to a National Park Service documentary video that tells you a little bit about the national parks. It's a short little video, but it gives you a nice little video tour of the park. So that's in here, and that's something we do for every park. It's the same thing for every national park, which makes it nice. So you know you're completing the same sorts of activities. You have something that is structured around the study of the national park. So we're not just pulling information from all over the place. In addition, there are these really nice pages to fill out for each national park. That's an additional activity if you'd like to do it. So again, they're for each national park. It's a little summary page, but you put it all together and you'd have a nice booklet of informational text and drawings and journal entries for each national park. So I think that's kind of a sweet way to do it also. In the back of the teacher manual, she also gives you a couple of ideas for an art extension. Here's the appendix where she lists the two options for the art extension. So there's a postcard or a snapshot, and then there are other opportunities for further research. So she'll give you a template here to make a postcard, or here, snapshots from the national park, or additional information you can list here to make a brochure. So there are lots of different options to summarize information, to document information, lots of different ways to do it depending on the style of your learner and what you want to use in terms of summarizing the information. So there are lots of options. So that is using the Waldock way. Although there's only one required spine for the Waldock way, which is what we are using again as our main portion of our curriculum, I felt like we needed additional resources for us to help feel like we had more of a well-rounded way of understanding the parks. So we also used this National Parks of the USA book. And this book gives a 2 to 3 page spread on each national park. So this is Great Smoky Mountains. Again, we're using that as our example. And it was nice to supplement for our animal profile because it did profile many different animals as well as some flora and fauna. None of these books I found are particularly wonderful as standalone, but having a couple of individual resources, you put them together and you have a more well-rounded understanding of what the parks are like. So this was a really good book too. And then to get a little bit more in depth in terms of science and geology and botany, we also purchased this book. So this is Scenic Science of the National Parks. Okay, so again, using the Great Smoky Mountains as our example, this is what a spread for the Great Smoky Mountains will look like. There is a page in the front that gives you some basic facts and figures. And then following that, there's a page on botany, some wildlife, and then finally some geology. So This book is definitely more reference material worthy, but lots of information here you can pull out and read aloud to your kids or help them to summarize the information in here. So again, this is great if you are looking to bulk up your national park study science portion beyond just the study of animals. So I really liked it for this because, again, we're using the national parks as the vehicle to teach history, geography, science, and literature. So going with that, we also came across this really great reference. It happened in America. And so this this book is filled with true stories of different real life experiences that happened in each of the 50 states. So if you want to expand your national park study to also include a state study, this is a great book to include for that. I also wanted to include a variety of other activities to help bulk up our study. So while I loved the Waldock Way as a way of organizing information, I felt like I wanted it to be more of a dynamic learning experience. So I found these books from the Wonder Park family. So they are an RV family that homeschools. Shout out to them. And we purchased the Shenandoah and the Smoky Mountain books. Those are the only two that I purchased so far. They have a few different ones on their website, and they are coming out with more. So what I love, love, love about these is everything. But they give you activities to do with your kids before you go. So preparing for your adventure, it has maps, it has itineraries, it has different hikes to go to, amenities in the parks. It's a great guidebook as in terms of a resource. And then it gives you pre-trip activities. So there's tons in here for pre-trip activities. I wish we could do it all. But it talks about mountains. It talks about animals that you're going to see. It gives you different STEM activities you can do. We did a waterfall force test this morning. That was really exciting to do. We've done a paddle wheel experiment. So all kinds of really cool things that are related to your trip to the national parks that are different than just documenting information. And in this book, they'll also have a forest critter spotlight. So we use this to help us with our animal profile in our student notebook. What was nice about this is that they listed several different animals in here. And the salamander was still one of them. So it was consistent information. There are real pictures of the animals there. And then if you want something in addition to all the STEAM content, she also adds in a creative arts section with different art activities as well. So these are all your pre-trip activities. Then there are also road trip activities here. Those include things like mazes, Sudokus, and other types of things that are more specific to the Smoky Mountains, such as great Smoky Mountain trivia. So isn't that cool? Just really fun things to do in the car and while you're traveling. Okay, after you get through all your road trip activities, there's a section on exploring the park. So there's a wind and weather log. There are all kinds of activities here. Bird watching challenge. So you have tons of things here to help support your child's learning at the park. Now, of course, if you're doing this without actually visiting the park, so some of the parks we are not going to get a chance to visit, we're just going to learn about, we likely would not need to get such a thorough book for something like that. But for parks that we are visiting, this is just a fantastic resource. And then post-trip, there are activities in here such as what things surprised me that I learned on the trip and lots of ways to reflect on their experiences there. So superb resources, really well thought out and planned. I highly recommend these a lot, Wonder Park family. So check them out. They're awesome. In terms of additional reading material, there are lots of great options out there to include. So these are recommended additional resources that were mentioned in the Waldock Way that we have really enjoyed. So the book series Campground Kids, and this book was thrilling. And we listened to the audiobook version. We've also listened to the Acadia version of the Campground Kids series, and they're all really adventurous and really nicely done. So there are quite a few books in this series. We also gave this book 2 thumbs up. The Mystery in the Smoky Mountains. So Carol Marsh writes this series. She also has a website with an online book club, additional activities, and some quizzes on each one. She has quite a few books in her National Park series, so definitely an easy read. If you're going to do this as a read aloud, you can easily read it in a day, maybe 2 days. But I think it's a pretty good early reader too for kids just getting into chapter books. And then for the kids that might like some time travel, the Bubba Jones series has a few, not as many as the other series, but this one is Great Smoky Mountains related, and it's time traveling through the Great Smoky Mountains. There are lots of Great Smoky Mountain specific books. The Great Smoky Mountain Salamander Ball was really fun. It talks about the Great Smoky Mountain salamanders and gives you a full list of very cool salamanders. And it's funny and rhyming and lyrical, and kids will love this one. So those were really fun. There's also this, which is not Smoky Mountain specific. If I Were a Park Ranger is very sweet, and it can be read for any of the parks, and it's a beautifully well done book. Then there's the Who Pooped in the Park series. So there are a few of these books, and the kids really like it. So it goes through identifying scat, identifying tracks for the different animals, and finding other clues along the way to identify what animal was there in the park. So really fun for the kids, but also really great real information. At the end, there are some great notes here on tracks and scat. So we have the Great Smoky Mountains and Shenandoah. I really appreciate and loved using literature as a way to teach my child. And although there wasn't a specific book list that was used for the Waldock Way, I decided to create our own based on different Charlotte Mason living book recommendations. So I just went online to the various websites for Charlotte Mason and created my own book list and put it together based on region. So Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Southwest, and so on, and Pacific Northwest. And I put it inside my teacher manual so I would have it. So there are tons of beautifully written living books out there. If you also like using literature as a way to teach and bring wonder and a little bit more depth and insight into your curriculum. So examples of this include When I Was Young in the Mountains, Appalachia, and The Voices of Sleeping Birds. And again, just another way to bring the concepts alive, bring them into storytelling. So we have the facts, we have the geography, we have some history, we have the animal profiles, we have the geology, the botany, and now we have the literature piece to help make a nice, well-rounded national park curriculum. And it definitely can be done. And lastly, I'm layering in pieces of Native American information and history too. So this book is beautiful as one recommendation, but there's a lot out there. The Earth Under Sky Bear's Feet, and this is a book of poems to layer in whenever it's available to us to do that. I think that's important too. So those are some of my additional recommendations that we've really enjoyed. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and are able to use the national parks in your homeschooler's life. There's so much information out there. This doesn't encompass everything for sure. And the national parks are a treasure and a beautiful resource to teach our kids. Enjoy it and happy travels.
Thanks for watching Chalks and Crocs. Until next time, keep adventuring.